All right, thanks, Sam. All right, so let's take a look at the agenda for our time together this evening. Intros we just did in chat, but what I would also like to see is anyone who is a member of the DeKalb County Collaborative for Young Children, which used to be named the DeKalb County Kindergarten Readiness Collaborative. I will explain that name change in a few minutes. Anyone who's part of that collaborative steering committee, though, could you put a little emoji into your screen? Oh, I see the hearts. What is that supposed to mean as eyes? I don't know. I see a thumbs up. Ooh, party horn. Is there even a mad emoji that someone could throw in there just to play with me? Anyone else a member of the collaborative? Oh, there is a mad face. Okay, thanks, Sam. So tonight, as always, we appreciate the work of the collaborative and do want to say that there is always room at the table for anyone else who would like to join us formally in this work and in the leadership. So please feel free to reach out to either me or Beth Prestegard, the chair, and we'll talk. So we've just done introductions. Next item on our agenda will be the community report card. This is a new document made this year. You'll be able to hear Beth and Courtney explain that and how to use it. Most of our discussion tonight, though, is on how can we expand early childhood care and education in DeKalb County. And we'll get into all the details of that, as well as the work that several of us have been engaged in over the year, and a lot of data. So my data, I don't know, is nerds okay to say? Or is that like not okay? But my data nerds, just wait, it's coming, okay? And then some discussion around, so what are we going to do with workforce? If we can expand seats capacity, how are we possibly going to provide the workforce that goes with that? And then lastly, action that any and all of us can take in order to support our youngest learners. That's our agenda for tonight. So we'll start with DeKalb County Collaborative for Young Children. Those of you who have been following and working with us, those of you who were with us when we formally adopted basics, or when we started our work plan, started strategic planning, you have known us as the Kindergarten Readiness Collaborative, or you've known yourselves as part of the Kindergarten Readiness Collaborative. The steering committee this year took a hard look at whether kindergarten readiness truly captured our full mission, and we decided that we needed to tweak our name, that we had never intended for our work to stop when the child walks into the kindergarten door. And we wanted to make sure that our name really reflected that we are looking at a longer spectrum of care, a longer spectrum of child success than only to the kindergarten door. And so the steering committee did decide to change the name to Collaborative for Young Children. That in and of itself was a lesson in consensus, for the group. And that's where we have settled. I am still the coordinator. They changed the name, but they didn't kick me out. So I am still the coordinator, and you will also hear from our chair, Beth, in a few minutes. We do want to remind everyone that our mission and vision have been in place for a couple years, but it's really important when we're taking a look at us collaboratively working together that we always go back to what's our mission, what is our vision, and that we are aligned to that. I was looking back over notes from last year where I had like underlined equitable, collaboration, impact, optimal, and that is still very much what we are grounded in, and we're hoping that everyone here is grounded in. The next slide, for those of you maybe not as familiar with the structure of the collaborative, you will see we've got the steering committee, and then can you see that? You probably can't see the cursor if I point to something, can you? No. All right, so you will see these circles, and each one is a partner group led by a representative of the steering committee, but it is an expansion out into the community. You'll see the community on the outside of that full circle. And each one of those circles, those are aligned to our strategic plan, which is also a test in consensus and how to really make a strategic plan that we can follow and adhere to, and where it measures outcomes. So you can see all the different areas. I won't read those to you, but I also want to kind of direct your attention to the areas of impact. We certainly weren't going to share the whole strategic plan tonight and put everyone to sleepy by, but we do want to remind everyone of our larger areas of impact, that we are looking at access to early learning opportunities, either through the families or through organizational opportunities. We are looking at how to get resources into the community as well as parents and families' hands. And lastly, we are looking at health and wellness of children, and then aligning all of our work to these larger areas of impact. And now I will turn it over to Beth and Courtney, who will walk us through this new document that we devised this year, or that I'll let them talk. Take it away.
Thank you. Is there any way to zoom in a little bit more on the report card so folks can see it better, or no?
The next slide does.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Okay. So thanks, Amanda. And I know we could spend a half an hour just giving a background on how we got where we are and how people got involved. And I echo what Amanda says, that, you know, this is such an important countywide initiative from north to south and east to west. And we, you know, every child matters. Sometimes we feel dominated by the big cities, but coming from Waterman, I can tell you that our smaller communities matter as well. So, so looking at our report card, and I worked closely with Sam and Courtney in our group. Can't remember who else was involved in that, if Audrey was also involved in that, but we created subcommittees from our original initiative, now the CYC. And this was one of the things that we decided, hey, we have some really important countywide data that's out there. Let's put this in a format that people can understand it and appreciate that. This is from 19 to 2020 school year. This report card process has been done for, I believe, 4 years, starting in 17. COVID is certainly not going to give us the most accurate data. So we're presenting to you a snapshot that aligns pretty closely with what's going on now. So the Illinois State Board of Education, and me being a volunteer, I'm also learning all these new acronyms. In short, ISB requires that all kindergarten teachers use the Kindergarten Individual Development Survey, the KIDS survey, as an observational tool to help communities better understand the development and readiness of their children. And it's done at the 40-day mark. So when the kids get in, they get settled in a little bit. Then this survey is done by the teacher with the student, documenting, certain areas, which we will talk more about. You'll see in the top left corner, this is DeKalb County. Other counties have the same data. We pulled out our own data. The school year, the number of kindergartners, we watch those numbers and they stay fairly consistent within our county. Again, the COVID year was a little bit different, but the findings from that survey showed us that 35% of young kids coming into kindergarten were kindergarten ready, and that 65% needed additional support. And that is a number that made us go, okay, we're working in the right area. We're working in an area where we can have impact. And Courtney's going to go on a little bit more and talk about, what the additional support areas look like. But this is truly a countywide initiative. And the wheel that Amanda had up really reflects, all the areas coming together and working together to help make sure that our littles are ready for kindergarten, because that kindergarten time segues into the rest of their school career. So with that, Courtney, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the developmental areas.
Sure. Thanks, Beth. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you, Sam, for changing the slide on there. So I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on this. I see we have a lot of educators in here, a lot of kindergarten teachers who actually collect this kids data, but I do want to just give us all just kind of like a common, base knowledge on what's going on here, here in our county with kids data. We do use kids data to inform a lot of the work we do. So it is very important to us as a collaborative, and we want it to be easily accessible and understandable to our community as well, which is why we devised this report card, which came from a template out of ISB. So when Beth talks about how 35% of our kiddos in that 2019-20 school year were kindergarten ready, and we had a big chunk of kiddos who needed some additional support. In order to be what's considered kindergarten ready, a child has to show readiness in all three of these developmental areas that you're going to see here. So there's math, language and literacy, and social emotional development. These three domains do align perfectly to our 5 basics, which is our local early learning initiative out of the ROE. And if you don't know, I am the basics person. So of course I'm going to do my little plug of the 5 basics are, 5 nurturing practices that anybody can do that will boost brain development. So we really like to align these because we want to show folks, if you're doing the basics, your kiddos are going to be on the track to demonstrate readiness when they get into that kindergarten classroom. So we can see, looking at these 3 domains of readiness, we see that 61% of kiddos are demonstrating readiness in social emotional domain, 49% in language and literacy, 42% are demonstrating readiness in math. And then those blue numbers are needs additional support. So things we definitely want to know, want to be informed on, and want to work on. The next section here on the bottom, I'm going to talk through because it can be maybe a little confusing. So I want to make sure it's really clear on what we were trying to show here. So the CYC, which is the Collaborative for Young Children, I'm still trying to get that in my brain. It's always coming off as KRC or Kindergarten Readiness Collaborative. So we are dedicated to looking at data disaggregated whenever possible, specifically when you're talking about student groups such as race and ethnicity, families, income level with families. So ISB does collect that data with this kids data. So what we wanted to show here is really there's a huge disproportionate amount of kindergarten readiness between student groups. Actually, I think between all of the student groups that we have put on this report card here, which was revealing inequities here in our county. It's important that we look at this. We can't ignore it. It has to be addressed. So I'm just going to go through really quickly each student group that you'll see, which is these little people by color. So the pink group here is showing the student groups of race and ethnicity. So you can see that 57% of Asian kindergartners were demonstrating readiness, 22% of Black kindergartners were demonstrating readiness, 20% of Latino kindergartners, this is who is demonstrating readiness, and then 24% for kiddos that are 2 or more races, and then 35% for our white kindergartners. So you can see there's some very big inequities here based by race and ethnicity, something that we definitely have to look at and address. If you go over to the orange little category, that is going to be by like income level, so that schools can like demarcate this by if a student qualifies for free and reduced lunch. So we see that only 24% of kiddos who are eligible for free or reduced lunch are kindergarten ready, compared to 42% of kindergartners who are not eligible for free and reduced lunch. So you're looking at families with low incomes and families without low incomes. And then that blue little category here is by kiddos who have an IEP. That's an individualized education program. So 20%, can you scroll down a little? Mine is getting cut off, Sam. That's without, I'm assuming, or with an IEP, I'm assuming.
I'm really sorry. I don't know why it's cut off on here on my slides, and the back end it's not, but.
Okay, I'm almost positive, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 20% of kiddos with an IEP are demonstrating readiness, compared to 37% of kiddos without an IEP. So again, we're seeing that gap. And then we go over to that. Okay, thank you.
That's correct, because I printed the slides and it came out just fine in the print.
Okay,
so you got it. Mm-hmm.
And then if we go over to our English language learner status, so only 5% of kiddos who are English language learners are demonstrating readiness, compared to 37% of kiddos who are not English language learners are demonstrating readiness. I hope this makes sense. I hope talking through it a little bit will make it make sense to you. If it doesn't, you can go ahead. I don't think we have time right this second. Sam has allotted some time for discussion at the end. So if you have a question, if you want to know anything about this, please put it in the chat and we will definitely get to it once we get to that Q&A. I don't want you to lose it, your question. So go ahead and put it in the chat and we will address it at the end. We do have plans to recreate this report card for every single year of PACE data, because this is done every single year. So this is something that we want the whole community to see, to know, and to be able to access. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Sam.
You and I just wanted to stress, I know Courtney said this at the beginning of the demographics section, but just to stress that those disproportionalities point to inequities in to access in our community. And so making sure that we're always tying that to what our community is providing or not providing, not the abilities of the students, because it really is about what are we doing to prepare our youngest learners. And so with that, I'm going to go into an overview of our community-based planning project that we have been doing for just over a year now. I'm glad that Grace Araya could be here from Illinois Action for Children. This is a project that we received facilitated support from Illinois Action for Children over the past year. And the goal of this, actually, I'll just go to the next one so that you can see what I'm saying. So what is community-based planning? It is a cross-sector project supported by Illinois Action for Children to prepare communities with significant slot gaps, and we will get to what exactly a slot gap is, to apply for early childhood care and education. You'll also hear me say ECCE. You'll see that a lot. It's early childhood care and education is a mouthful. So it's to apply for ECCE funding as it becomes available. Who's doing the work? The ROE with a core team from other agencies has been coordinating the work for the last year. The planning is meant to be done by many community partners, including early childhood care and education organizations, families, employers, and more. We know that all of us have a part in preparing our youngest learners. And the end goal of this project, which is ongoing, is to increase publicly funded early childhood care and education slots. So publicly funded early childhood care and education slots require eligibility criteria to be met, including but not limited to household income, generally at or under 185% of the federal poverty level. Because some programs have different income eligibilities, for the purpose of the data that we're going to look at, we looked at families at 200% or below federal poverty level, so that you can see what that looks like. It gives us a better number to work with in regards to some require a lower income level and some have a higher income level that they accept. So with that, these are the pieces. What is the CBP process? First, we want to make sure, again, that we started with a foundation of racial equity. The DCCYC and the ROE has been very intentional with increasing our capacity in racial equity and what that really means and looks like. And so we want to make sure that we are always looking at the data that we have in front of us with a racial equity lens, so that we can really look at where are those inequities and where do they exist. So these are the parts and the kind of the process that we've gone through so far. We have assessed the current ECC landscape by looking at data, slot gaps, and asset mapping. We have engaged families throughout this process to understand what it is families really need and want in early childhood care and education. We have learned how program models and funding can be combined to meet those family wants and needs, so that we're looking for the best fit for our community. We're trying to understand what the current ECCE workforce looks like, and then what that means in regards to developing that workforce. We've also looked at assessing where there is existing space to increase slots, what the requirements are for facilities, so that we can partner with either existing facilities or look for capital funding to build new facilities, and then securing partners to apply for funding that increase publicly funded early childhood care and education slots. So that is, again, the end goal is to increase those slots. So looking at that, we look at what are called slot gaps. And so this is a very simplified version that is countywide. We have it broken down by school district boundaries, if that's helpful, and we can see that a little later on briefly. But what slot gaps really tell us is how many children we are not serving or how many children we are serving that are eligible. So right now, it is broken out by under 3 years old, or 0 to 2, you might hear it called, and then 3 to 5, or 3 to 5, not including kindergartners. So we have 1,248 children under 3 that are eligible for publicly funded early childhood care and education slots. We have 1,225 3 to 5-year-olds that are eligible. Eligibility, again, is generally based on, for the purpose of this presentation, generally based on family income. There are other weighted eligibility criteria specific to program models. So these are children living in homes with incomes at or below the 200% federal poverty line, which all of this data is from 2019. That's the most current data that we have a full set of. And so the federal poverty line for a family of 4 in 2019 was roughly $25,750 a year. So that kind of gives you an idea. So then we have the number of publicly funded early childhood care and education slots. And you can see that we have significantly less slots for children under 3 years old. And overall, you can see that we have significantly less slots than children that are eligible. And so then the slot gap is the difference between those numbers. And then the percent of eligible children being served, you can see at the bottom. So right now, with the slots we have available in our county, we are able to serve approximately 9% of all children eligible under 3 years old. And that is not taking into account if our programs that we have available are at capacity. So we are not at this point even serving 9% of all of our children eligible. That is just what we have the capacity to serve. And then you can see for 3 to 5 year olds that we are only serving 42% of children that are eligible. You will notice there's an asterisk next to the 111 publicly funded early childhood care and education slots for children under 3 years old. And that is just to denote that all of our current publicly funded slots for children under 3 are home visiting slots. And we see home visiting as a very valuable asset to our community, but it does not necessarily meet the need of a family that needs full-time care. And so that's just something to note because that'll show up later also. So with that, we also were able to do some asset mapping with support from Illinois Action for Children. And these are some of the things that that asset map shows. I'm actually going to take us to our asset map because it's so much more powerful when you see it working live and in person. So here's our county. And you can see right away, and I'm gonna zoom it in just a little bit. It cuts off just a little part of our county when we do it this way. In our county, you can see right now the purple shading denotes the population density of children under 6 that are living at that 200% FPL. And so you can see if we zoom in, I can tell you this dark purple area right here is the Northwest Annie Glidden corridor in DeKalb, the city of DeKalb. And then you can see this slightly lower or less dark purple right here is the southern part of the city of DeKalb. This large rectangle in the southwest corner of our county is where you would find Waterman and Shabana, and then all down into Somonauk. And then if we look down in this southeastern corner, that's Sandwich, Illinois. And up here, we go a little bit up here, you'll see this is Genoa, and over here would be Kirkland. So then this other slightly darker purple is mostly DeKalb and Sycamore. So that helps us then identify where children are located living at that eligibility criteria for income. The circles that you're going to see on here already, the red circle, the green, yellow, those are denoting our publicly funded programs already. And you can see that those then are mostly located in DeKalb Sycamore area, though the ones serving 0 to 3, which would be this yellow one, this that's our home visiting, and that blue one, those serve children from all over the county, even though they're located in the city of DeKalb. These orange ones, there's 3 of them on here. Those are our preschool for all programs that are located in school districts. So you can see Sandwich has a preschool for all program. Indian Creek has a preschool for all program, and then DeKalb School District has a preschool for all program. And then you'll also notice there's a preschool for all expansion program that serves in the entire county, although it is located in DeKalb at Northern Illinois University, and it has 40 slots for the entire county. And then the red one is Head Start, which is also a preschool program for children 3 to 5. So the other thing that this asset map though was able to show us, we were able to kind of customize what data we wanted to see in here. And that is, we can see where our licensed early childhood care and education providers are. And you can see again that there's a high concentration of those providers in and around DeKalb and Sycamore. And that's nothing new to most of you. If you've lived in DeKalb County for any amount of time, you'll know that we have a centralization of resources in our largest and most populated cities. But it's important again to note that that then creates some barriers in regards to transportation. We also have our school district boundaries on here that you can see. And when you click on them, you can go in there and you can see how many children under 6 there are in that school district, how many, oh, let me unclick this one. There. It goes by which layer is on top. You can see the district enrollment. You can see the racial and ethnic breakdown of that district, so that we're again looking at our data through a racial equity lens, making sure we're seeing where children, where our children that are most at risk are living, and so that we can look for those inequities. And so you can also see what our preschool for all capacity is, and our kids data. Our kindergarten individual development survey data is also in here, that Courtney and Beth shared. So I will be sharing a link for this after. There's so much data in here. It's really, you could spend a lot of time looking at it. I am going to go back to our slideshow again. And again, feel free to put questions in the chat, because we want to definitely answer your questions. We just want to make sure we're getting you all the information we have, and then we'll have time for that at the end. So just to kind of wrap up this part, the asset mapping really then shows us where children eligible for publicly funded early childhood care and education are living. It shows us the location of our current programs, as well as the location of our licensed childcare, home and center-based. It shows us where childcare deserts exist. We can see there's some areas in our county that have very little options for early childhood care and education. I forgot to click on this, that layer, but we can even see where children living in deep poverty under the 50% federal poverty line live. We can see where children of color live, again, to make sure that we're really looking at where those things are overlapping and what inequities then are existing in our county to address that. And then we can see the school district boundaries with enrollment. And those they're just all pieces that help tell a larger story. So then we wanted to make sure, okay, we have the data, but again, we need those pieces that tell that larger story. We did some family engagement. So we had 5 focus groups that we held. One of them was virtual. 2 of them were in DeKalb at parks that were in walking distance of some of our neighborhoods of primarily our neighborhoods of with lower incomes, and neighborhoods where we have density of people of color living. We also had a focus group in Genoa and one in Sandwich, because we want to make sure, again, we're getting that geographic diversity of our county. And then we had a survey that we put out mostly through social media, but we did send it. We had some paper copies available, and we sent it through our school districts. We had them share it. And so out of that, we had almost 700 responses to our survey, which was huge. I think we counted that a huge success. And the goal of our survey was to engage as many parents and caregivers as possible within a short timeline to capture a snapshot of what parents and caregivers need in early childhood care and education. We were able to incentivize it, which helped. And again, we relied on our school districts to help push it out, which I think helped also. And so you can see this is a result from one of the questions from our survey. We asked parents and caregivers what type of care program services would be their first choice. And you can see just about 31% said that they would prefer a child care center, followed next closest by care by parent. And so I think that pointed, or we felt that pointed clearly to what parents needed in regards to they need a childcare center that offers full-time care. And so this was another question on our survey. Ideally, what are you looking for in a childcare or in childcare programs and services? And by far, the most often given response was location close to home or work. And I think then that also combined with the idea that there are some areas in our county that have very little childcare available in near our smaller towns, shows that that's what parents are looking for if they're working within the communities they live in. And that was then next closely followed by they were looking for quality programs that offered high impact whole child care. And so we combined those survey results with, again, those focus groups. The focus groups, we also were able to incentivize, which was helpful. And I think that it gave us a much fuller picture then of what parents and caregivers want and need, which kind of brought us to what kind of program model are we looking at when the time comes to apply for funding. So we looked at those, those slot gaps, the asset map, and then our family needs, and all of those together really pointed to when it's time to apply for funding, we really need to expand specifically and publicly funded childcare centers that serve either children 0 to 2 or children 0 to 5. That seems to be where the gap is at this point that we should address first. And so some of the ways that we can get to that potentially are to braid funding by using childcare assistance program monies, or CCAP as many people know it, with partnerships with for-profit and nonprofit early childhood care and education providers. And then we can, if we can combine those in those partnerships, combine that with publicly funded programming, and then also potentially looking at employer subsidized childcare as well. We know that whatever program model we end up going with as funding becomes available, it needs to be high impact and evidence-based program that supports optimal child development. And it would be really great if it could meet some extended hours of care or even non-traditional hours, second and third shift coverage. Those were some things that came up in the surveys and the open-ended question on the surveys several times. People were looking for those care options that are not always readily available. And so then when we're considering facilities and location again is also what goes into that is also where childcare currently isn't at or where those largest slot gaps are. But then we also have to think about the DCFS licensing standards and what those dictate. And so there are space requirements that we have to think about per child, the access to toilets and hand washing station, food preparation, entrance and exit accessibility, play equipment. These are all things that you have to consider when you're looking at a facility for early childhood care and education. And so for some of those things, we are exploring and are interested in capital funding opportunities that might become available. Which then, I think I'm going to pause really quick because I know that was a lot and I just wanted to see, I think we're pretty good on time. I tend to talk really fast. So I would like to open it up for questions at this point and see if there's any, whoops, I did not mean to do that, sorry. If there are any questions that we can answer right now. And in the chat, okay, slides, yep, slides will be shared. Does anyone want to unmute? And are there any questions up to this point? Anything you need me to go back to before we continue our discussion on workforce? No? Oh, Joanne, go ahead.
Question about the data when you were talking about the screening that takes place 40 days after a child starts kindergarten. You made mention of a huge gap between English learners and non-English learners. Does the data indicate whether that survey is administered to the child in their native language or is it done in English?
I know that I believe Sandra's on the call as well as Amanda and Michelle Escapa, both Sandra and Michelle are from Kids, and they could answer that if you don't mind coming off mute and answering.
I think we have some kindergarten teachers on the call too.
True.
I don't want to speak out of turn on that one since I'm not doing it.
I was just curious because it would make a difference, you know?
Well,
Mhm.
we do know that the kids is done based on observations. It's not an assessment that you sit down and record at that time with children. So if they're in a ESL or bilingual dual language type of environment in school, then that would be, those observations would be done in their natural environment. Generally, those observations are best done in a play-based setting because that's when children are most easily able to demonstrate what they know and what they know.
Mhm.
And Stephanie Hill did chime in the chat and said a lot of the assessment is done based on observation.
Thank you.
Assessment is kind of a harsh term. It's really a survey of what children are demonstrating, and it's done based on observation.
Yeah, as a kindergarten teacher, I would not say that anyone else has ever had access to entering the kids' information. So even if they receive services, you know, they have a push in into my class or whatever to come work with my students, they don't get to fill out kids. I fill out kids. And so it's all based on my English language observations about how they are, I guess. But I also don't remember which question would have given that data. So it's kind of interesting too. I can't think right now what questions on kids I would have answered that would have given that data even about English language learners. So I don't know.
That would probably be tied to SIS data on how the child is recorded as a student in SIS, I would think.
And it might be dependent on whether they're receiving, whether they qualify for like ESL or English language learning things. There is one more, Stephanie Hill entered some more information in the chat. There is one more question that we'll go ahead and talk about right now. And that was, I see Hannah also. Diana said, for facilities, do you have room in your current school districts? We have 8 school districts in DeKalb County, and we have a couple that are entertaining whether or not they could accommodate expanding in their districts. So we are trying to partner with them as much as possible and looking at that. All right. And then Hannah, I think you asked a question maybe, but we will go back to it at the end. So keep putting your questions in the chat. Whoops, I didn't mean to mute myself. So then, of course, a very important piece, and Amanda mentioned it at the beginning of our presentation and our forum, is early childhood care and education workforce development. So we know that early childhood educators are critical to our local economy and are sometimes known as the workforce behind the workforce, supporting our children's development and kindergarten readiness. And though the pandemic has shed more light on the challenges facing the ECCE workforce, shortages have began before COVID, similar with our teacher shortages. Those shortages were already there. They're just exacerbated by COVID. So locally, we know that there are childcare and education classrooms that are currently not open due to workforce shortages. And though the pandemic has so before we move into an activity around the strengths and opportunities in workforce development, I wanted to focus our attention on these questions. And if you would like, you are welcome to put in the chat or just unmute and share. How does the early childhood care and education workforce shortage impact your organization? And what part do you feel your organization has in supporting early childhood care and education development? Is there anybody that is brave and wants to unmute?
Well, you know, this is Nancy Tabota, and I never shy away from a chance to talk about this. The shortage in the early childhood education workforce at Children's Learning Center, it has forced us to drastically reduce our enrollment. So we we would have, if we were at full staff, we would be able to add 60 more children into our program. So that's a huge, to me, that would solve a huge problem, because we would be able to, and I know I'm not speaking specifically about Children's Learning Center, but the Growing Place, Land of Learning, Once Upon a Time, Walnut Street in Genoa. These are just some of the programs in the county that are dealing with this. So it has a dramatic impact on us. What part, as far as the second question, what part does your organization have in supporting early childhood education development? We have been with our current staff, because we do have 4 teacher assistants that are working as teachers in the classrooms following the DCFS guidelines. And we are working with them to develop their teaching qualifications, either through a CDA or an associate's degree. And so we're playing a really important role within our organization. Outside of our organization, obviously developing the workforce is going to benefit Children's Learning Center and all those other agencies that I mentioned already. So we are crucial and critical for the success of developing the workforce.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Is there anyone else that wants to share or join the discussion?
I would love to just kind of echo Nancy as well. Vanessa and I are here from KinderCare in DeKalb, and we are 100% feeling exactly the same way that she is at her center right now. We're struggling to keep staff and maintain enough to really serve our families. And we know how important this industry is. And as a center, we're doing our best. Our directors are doing their best. Our teachers are putting in the hours. And I know our families appreciate it, but it is very difficult to see a center that could be, booming as we have before and helping so many more families. And instead, we're turning people away. And it's very disheartening, because we know that it's crucial to get these kids ready for that public school system.
Jackie.
I think if I can just add on to that, as a public school, we definitely see that difference, that impact of students not being able to participate in early childhood services. So part of our kindergarten screener asks that question: did you go to a childcare or preschool? And it really does make a difference in that kindergarten readiness, for sure.
This is, I just want to add that I really appreciate hearing the voices of people from childcare centers and school districts. I'm with a home visiting program with Children's Home and Aid in DeKalb, and we are short-staffed as well. And I know home visiting is a whole different thing than the publicly funded child care settings, but we've had families that have had to be kind of put on hold too because of being short-staffed. But part of our mission is to support parents in then supporting their kids to become kindergarten ready. We really value and understand the importance of that. And just thanks to everybody that is working on this. This is really interesting and valuable information.
Anyone else want to join the conversation before we move to our group activity? And I apologize if you can hear my dog going crazy in the background. I will just read one of the comments in the chat. As a small part-time preschool, we have been unable to find a DCFS qualified to be a sub for myself. We have to close if I'm unable to get to work, taking the kiddos away from a day of school that they need. And so I assume you're a director. I think that's Brittany. Yep, Brittany.
Yes, I am.
Thank you for sharing in the chat, Brittany, and thank you each for sharing out loud. I'm going to back out of our show. Well, first, let me go to the next slide. So we're going to, as a group, I would like to do a SWOT analysis. S stands for strengths, W stands for weaknesses, O stands for opportunities, and T stands for threats. And so I'm going to back out, and Courtney is going to assist me by typing in live as we talk. So feel free to unmute and just share if you have a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat to our early childhood care and education workforce development. And I will share with you some that we came up with in a workforce development meeting that we have had so far in the CBP planning, our project. So who would like to add first? Nancy, can I call on you, Nancy, since you did volunteer and say you're always willing to talk on it or speak on it?
Yes. So I feel that the strength that we have, one of the strengths that we have is we have the university right here in our yard. And so having NIU, having Kishwaukee College, those are two strengths that we have. And I think they provide us with opportunities to create learning groups that can work together to develop their skills. And but I'm also going to say that one of the weaknesses that we have is, and Chris Kipp put it in the chat, is that the pay, the wages that early childhood educators earn is so we are so underpaid. And until there is a livable wage, and I'm not talking about a poverty of just above poverty, because right now they're sub-poverty. Until there is a livable wage, it's going to be a weakness and a threat to reaching any of these goals. So I think I covered all of them. I said strength, opportunity, weakness, and threat.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
For getting us started. If you don't want to unmute, you can put some answers in the chat and just put like an S, W, O, or T, and then a dash to let us know which one you think it is. But if we have some willing volunteers to participate in our discussion, does anyone else want to unmute?
Sam, I would love to say that our strength in this community is, first of all, the ROE. You guys are phenomenal. You guys do so much to try to bring us all together and to have the conversations. And I don't know where we'd be without you guys. So I think that is a huge strength. And I think that we have a lot of very passionate people in this county that are invested in young children's education and, value the importance of that. And so it's just spreading that word and through basics, everything that has been done with basics, it's just continuing to get that out there to people to utilize to help them feel better about their parenting and the importance of early childhood to get their child ready. So sorry, I said a lot. Sorry, Sam.
No, you're fine, Audrey. We love it. There is a strength in the chat, Courtney, about having a lot of data already gathered and to aid in understanding and solving the problem. And it's okay if we'll fix the formatting later. And then there was another one. Diana, I think, said that we do have resources available as an outsider. So Diana's in an ROE overseeing Lee, Ogle, and Whiteside. So they have families that come to our communities for services. Would anybody else like to unmute or add in the chat?
I guess I'd like to say, sorry. I was going to say one more thing about a threat. People aren't wanting to work, it seems, since the pandemic has started, and there's a lot of reasons why, and you know, everybody has their own reasons, but being around children is probably scary for some people because yes, you know, they have a lot of germs, but you know, I don't know, but I feel like this pandemic has even intensified people's reasonings maybe to stay away from younger children if they truly don't love being with them and seeing them grow.
So just in general, workforce shortages and yeah.
I was going to say that, you know, I see things a couple different ways because I'm here and I'm with community-based planning, and we're talking about early childhood expansion and workforce development. But then I'm also a boss, right, of an organization, and I see our organization being negatively impacted when childcare is not available. And I'm saying that because I want, I mean, if we look at ROE as not just ROE, but we're a business, right? Too. And if we could have more business leaders also see that they could positively contribute to the problem that's harming themselves, right? If their families aren't healthy, if their families don't have childcare, if employees are coming to work not knowing if their children are safe, fed, happy. Happy was the number 3 top thing that our families said they wanted. They wanted their children to be happy in their placement. That if we could, you know, so I'm going to phrase this as an opportunity instead of a weakness or a threat. We have the opportunity for business to invest in our workforce development because it's only going to benefit them and their own productivity and profit. And I don't know how to get to that place where we are appropriately and fully engaging our businesses to invest in our youngest learners. So we'll figure it out, but I haven't figured it out yet. Okay. This is a mission.
There is a question from Lucinda about engaging NIU's CDFC their child care department to see about increasing students in their program. We have they have been included in a lot of conversations and attended. And there is an opportunity with the Early Childhood Equity for Access Consortium. It is on another page, Courtney, I might not be saying it right, but there is an opportunity right now for to really build it's scholarships for workforce to get their bachelor's degrees if they want in child development, I believe, and early childhood education, so that they can become a teacher if they wanted to in an early childhood setting. If anyone has more information about that and I'm butchering it, please feel free to jump in.
I just want to tack on a little bit to what Amanda was saying. You know, I think it's really critically important for businesses to really get involved in this and to be concerned about their workers, especially who have young children. And, you know, at some point, I think we need to flip it a little bit. We do need to have a stronger early childhood workforce. But if businesses aren't ready, willing, able, whatever, I mean, it's a big ask. It's tough. There's, you know, licensing and whatnot. It's hard. But, you know, then they're going to, like, one thing the pandemic has shown us is that people in general, but parents especially, are looking for flexibility, you know, some remote work opportunities, flexibility. And I think that's really kind of come out of COVID and the childcare crisis and just, it's just kind of like all come together, and I think they're just going to be hard pressed to not do one thing or another, if that makes sense. Like either help us expand, help childcare grow, or provide a lot more flexibility to your workers, for their family.
Yeah, I would add on to, a threat. I think if, the more we talk to businesses, we will learn that, lack of attendance, high turnover, absences, it does threaten businesses and, their productivity, their sustainability. There's a huge investment to get an employee up and going at a job than to have them leave because they can't find quality daycare. And my other comment on the other side was kind of lengthy, but relating to, opportunity, we're highlighting this. I feel like we're getting attention. I mean, I've not been involved in these discussions until maybe 7 years ago. But I feel like we're at a great place in time and we have momentum. And so I think a really positive thing is the passion of the people involved and the dedication. And I feel like we're going to get somewhere. So kudos to everyone who's taking action and caring about this cause, because if we stick with it, I think perseverance is on our side.
It looks like there are a couple things in the chat too. A weakness with Diana. Do you want to explain?
I don't know which for the consortium.
Oh, that's for the consortium. I'm sorry, I didn't see so the consortium has some limitations. So that would be, okay, a weakness in that it doesn't allow family support specialists, which generally would be home visitors, to access that scholarship to become early childhood educators in a program. Is that right?
Yeah, not that we were trying to take our home visitors, from our home visiting programs, but just trying to look at all of the possible options of, early childhood workforce. If it is somebody who has a family support specialist credential with Gateways, even if it's higher than the ECE one, that's not at this time. It needs to be an ECE Gateways credential. So fingers crossed. Just as, we have some home visitors that have been in early childhood for decades and would love to, take that next step with the support of scholarships. So.
And thank you, Courtney. I see what you said now. That we have spilled onto the second page here, just in case. So we are recording everything in the chat. Is there anything else anyone wants to add as a strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat? Joanne, had you been about to say something earlier and I interrupted you, possibly?
Yeah, it was just a thought that crossed my mind. When we talk about engaging businesses and the value to them, to have today's workforce show up at work and be ready to work at their position all day, knowing their children are safe and well cared for. The other piece of it is a longer term proposition. When local employers are surveyed, many times what they say is they're unable to find qualified workers who have the education and the skills to fulfill the slots they have open. If there's a way to make a link between the early childhood readiness, having kids be ready for kindergarten, these are the people that are going to be their workers in the future. And they will be better educated and they will be better prepared. It's a longer term project, but it all kind of links together.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of data out there to show that the return on investment in early childhood care and education is so significant. The earlier the investment, the greater the return. on investment, because you're right. It's our future workforce, and just future in general. So that's a great point.
And I'd like to add, because that's fantastic what you just said, that also the benefit is that it'll reduce crime, because when you educate somebody and they have a passion and a drive and a vision of where they can go, they're going to be less likely to be out there committing crimes, which will drive up property values. I mean, this whole conversation is fantastic. I mean, it's so on point with what we need to do.
Absolutely. There are so many societal benefits to having when you invest in early childhood care and education down the road. Any other comments or additions to our discussion? All right, I am going to go back to the presentation, and I will just share some of the things that came out of an ongoing kind of work group, if you will, and feel free to join any of the work that we've talked about. But some of the things that came out from there that are maybe we didn't hit yet. We talked about knowledgeable local partners and secondary education institutions. There is an interest in developing this workforce, I think even at a state and national level. And we have an active CCR&R, which is our 4C, that is child care referral. Why can I not remember what the other R is? Can you tell me, Lucinda? I know you're from 4C, I believe.
Resource.
Resource, thank you. Resource and referral. Child care resource and referral center. We have an active one that is always offering training. So those are some strengths that came out of that previous conversation. Opportunities, we mentioned the scholarship program, although it may have some limitations. Illinois is prioritizing funding for early childhood care and education, including for workforce. And then if the Build Back Better ever actually comes through, there are pieces of that are meant to increase parity in pay, so that people are making a worthy and living wage in the field. And then some of the weaknesses that came out of that discussion, well, the shortage just in general, that we need to do some work locally on our pipeline to increase workforce. So we have the institutions, but there has not been a lot of encouragement for people to go into early childhood care and education. And so we need to build that up somehow. And then, of course, that the wages are incomparable. Threats, similarly, reflecting some of the low interest that we have seen previously in ECC as a career, and then the unsustainable worthy wages. And so thank you so much for adding to that discussion. We do have a meeting coming up in February 2nd, to continue work around workforce development. And so we will be adding the feedback we got tonight to that, so that we can have a fuller discussion and hopefully start looking towards some solutions, because we don't want to just admire the problem. We definitely want to work towards solutions locally. And so with that, some of the next steps for expanding early childhood care and education in DeKalb County we're going to continue conversations again about workforce. We are exploring capital construction grants and funding and support, technical support. We're exploring programming grants. We are creating new and expanding current partnerships for locations, facilities, and delivery of programming. So with our school districts, with current profit and nonprofit early childhood care and education providers. And so if any of this is of interest to you and you want to stay involved or to get involved in the work that's been going on for the last year, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at smcdavid@dekalbcounty.org, or you can message me through our DeKalb County ROE Facebook. You can call me if you want. I don't know if I put my phone number on here, but I can get it to you. You have my email because I've been emailing you for about a month now about this event tonight. So please contact me so you can get involved if you are interested in continuing that. And at that point, I'm going to hand it back over to Amanda to just give us a few more ideas about some actions we can take.
You notice how I'm put in charge of opening and closing, but they're like, you stay out of like the heart of things because you won't explain it as well as we do. So no, I am very happy to be at the open and the close, and proud of the team and the work we've done in the collaborative, as well as our community-based planning. I know there's, I at least saw Jody. Jody's been a part of that team. I saw her on here. And Grace was on too from Action for Children that helped to co-fund some of this work. And I think we're getting, more and more engaged and interested in this. So, so here we are, and we can't solve all of this tonight. Can't build a new facility tomorrow, can't bring in a whole workforce. We cannot immediately fix wage disparity, but we're here. And like Sam said, we're not going to just admire the problems. So here's some ideas for all of us and anyone on actions we can take right now to help support our youngest learners. And what I'm going to do is actually encourage you that as we take a quick look at each one of these, if there's one you think you can commit to, just put it in the chat. Make that your goal, make that your truth for right now, that this is something you can work toward. So one of the things you can do is do the basics with the children you interact with. And if you feel like you don't know enough about the basics, talk to Courtney. Or lots of other people at the ROE, actually, for that matter, because we are an implementation partner, and a lot of our staff are trained, as well as several people on the call. So we as a community, last year's, was it last year's forum, or was that an early learning summit, where really our theme was it takes a village, right? So it takes a village. You can do the basics with every single child you encounter. If you know them and they're easy to remember and they're usable language, you can do the basics with them. You can become a basics partner and promote the basics. And that could be you personally, or it could be you in your role with your organization. Join the work being done. Like we just talked about tonight, let Sam know. Join the conversation. You can advocate for appropriate pay for ECCE professionals. I know that's harder. As soon as we put in the word, advocate, I immediately think, that means I got to go lobby, or I have to, change policy, or I have to talk to somebody important about this. But there are probably some other ways too that we can, just as a community, really take a look at what does advocacy mean. And maybe that does mean also talking to our big businesses. Join the CYC Partner Hub that supports our youngest learners. Maybe your background is home visiting. Maybe your background is pre-K mental health. Maybe your background is professional development, and you'd really like to see how early childhood educators and K-12 educators can work together. We have a committee for that Sam runs. You can work with that. Can you come up with ways to implement support for our youngest children within your organization. Maybe you are the ambassador. Maybe you are the grassroots force in your current organization that can make a difference. Commit to that. If that's who you think you are, we need you. And then, of course, financially support basics or other CYC initiatives, or find financial support out there. Because I can say a lot of the work we do has not been funded by the state. It was Illinois Action for Children that had to fund our community-based planning. It's DeKalb County Community Foundation that funds our early learning task forces. It's McCormick Foundation that largely funds basics along with the Community Foundation. Friends for DeKalb ROE. Most of the early childhood work that my office does is not even driven by state or county funding. It is driven by philanthropy. So we got to find the funders that can keep this going and really make a difference. And you may be the connection to some of those investors. So I appreciate what anyone is willing to commit to. I even appreciate if you're just going to toy with the idea for a while and mull it over and then come back to us later and say, I'd really like to do this or that. So we can all take action though, together. And we will end with questions, comments, concerns. Before we do that, very quickly, I think Sam had a couple housekeeping items to inform us on, and then we will have any other open discussion.
Yes, before we leave, I did want to thank everyone for coming tonight and joining this conversation. We really appreciate that. I also wanted to just let you know that we will be sending an email out with links to access the recording, the slides, the community kindergarten readiness community report card document, as well as some previous community-based planning things if you're interested in that. When we close the meeting out, an evaluation will pop up. It's a Google form. If you could please complete that. If you don't get to it tonight, I will send it in that email also, so you'll have a second chance. And then, of course, again, really quickly, if you haven't already registered with your IEIN number or Gateway's ID number and you want credit for tonight, please private chat it to me while we go to some questions. And there were a couple questions in the chat that we didn't get to. There was one about space, if there is space in public pre-Ks, right? I think space in public pre-Ks, or maybe it was private. We are looking to partner with anybody that has space. We'll potentially partner with anybody that has space. And then Hannah earlier had a question about the disproportionality between our English language learners on the community report card, and if it was fully accurate or if it's potential or possible that children would be more comfortable in a setting where their home language is used. And I think that we always have to take into account any personal bias that we might have and how that affects potentially the situation, or again, the environment, like you said, Hannah, if whether it's or not it's they're in a comfortable environment or not. So absolutely. Are there any other questions though that we can take? Amanda, I'll let you take the questions. I took over, sorry.
Sure. Yep. Questions, comments, concerns, revelations. We'll take them.
Amanda, is there anything on the horizon that you know of in terms of funding for some of, for increasing slots or facilities or wages, or is it all just sort of nebulous at this point?
Well, We are anticipating that there will be more early childhood funding coming. We're waiting to see if any new RFPs, requests for proposals, will come out this spring for next fiscal year from the state. There's also the early childhood transformational team, which is like a whole separate presentation, okay? But a statewide system for early childhood was just developed over the last several months. And they are being put into place regionally, lined up with ROEs actually, in order to help support collaboratives such as CYC. I can't say they're going to throw a lot of money at us, but they're there to support us, and that's a possibility. Personally, here professionally, I am going to be seeking some construction grants in conjunction with the community, oh my gosh, I forgot the acronym.
Food and Education
Building we're
Center?
working on with DCCG in order
Food
to.
and Education Center. Yes.
Thank you. Too many acronyms right now, and it's late for me. So we are looking at that. And then, you know, Jody and I are certainly looking at prevention initiative, birth to 3. We currently do home visiting with that money, but we are also looking at center-based in the future. And so I think that there could be some opportunities coming, but I also think we need to do some hustling and really look for where those opportunities are and look in non-traditional places. You know, government does not always give us what we need, and I'm government. So, you know, so yeah, we really have to look.
One
Any other? Go ahead, Beth.
Yeah,
I
I
was just
just had one, you know, kind of as like a private citizen and a volunteer. I just think if all of us can go away and spread the good news and keep our eyes and ears open for people that have a passion for youngers, whether it's grandparents or teachers or, you know, businesses, because I just was looking through the chat and the excitement and the, you know, cohesiveness, you know, we all think the same. That if we could take that into our communities, you know, it's in our control to make a difference and to make a change. And it just takes us to, you know, raise our hand and get involved as we can and pass the word. And so this was kind of reinvigorating for me. So thanks.
Any other comments or concerns? Feedback?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, quickly, was in pre-K for a long time and I'm in kindergarten this year, but speaking just to like the shortage of people, like the workforce, and it's not a permanent solution, but we've kind of accidentally stumbled into like a huge opportunity with our parents, that we have found that a huge number of our parents are wanting and willing to come in and help out. We've had a really big shortage of parapros and just interventionists to come in and work with kids one-on-one or help out. And our parents have actually stepped up in a huge way to volunteer to come in, even if it's for an hour or a couple hours, or to just fill in, you know, in a room just as an extra pair of hands or prep materials. And I know when I was in pre-K, that definitely would have been helpful. Just even have a parent come in and help me with some of that stuff or work with a small group of kids. So, you know, I'm sure you guys have already reached out, but, you know, people still working at centers, that has really worked for us this year in the public school, is to ask those parents to step up and come in, and they've been really willing and they're great at it. So maybe if you haven't looked into that, just see if that's kind of an untapped resource this year.
Thanks, Hannah.
I'd love to see those parents learn more about the basics so they could be doing that at home and in the classroom too. We've already got it ready to roll.
All right, everybody. It looks like our time is coming to a close. Again, though, lots of opportunities for us to continue the good work. There are children right now who need more than they are getting. We know this. And we know that there was probably a child born today who needs more and needs us. So we always have to remember that there's a great sense of urgency in my mind always, and my heart always, when I think more children were born. Have we as a community done everything we should have done to give them the best life they're going to have in DeKalb County? And I think we have too many gaps right now, that we don't have the perfect, the right system for them yet.